If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
Our guest today is Kate Fenner. Kate's a coach and she trains and has competed in dressage, show jumping, western, working equitation, hacking and polo. Kate's an equine scientist and is currently working towards a PhD, and she's working on training and welfare. She's in a second year, and we'll talk a little bit about her study and relationship between, horses, their housing, discipline, responsiveness, breed, age and owner experience a little bit later on in the interview. But meanwhile, how are you today, Kate?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
Nice to be here.
Good to have you here, Kate. Kate, we normally start off with a favourite quote. Have you got one for us?
Well, I do. It's not really a quote, but it's something somebody said to me. John Lyon said to me once, and I spent about a year over there in Colorado with them, and he said every time he gets on a horse, he says to himself, "This is the only horse in the world." And he said, and it was an amazing thing because I never really think about it. And as someone that often rides 10 horses a day, it's really important that we do treat every horse just like that. So it's something that's really stuck with me and something that I've told myself every time I put my foot in that stirrup.
And it's interesting too, because sometimes you can get on it and just, particularly if you're riding a few horses, just try and do the same routine, exactly the same as what you've done with the previous horse. And every horse is going to tell you something a little bit different. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Kate, how did you first start with horses? What are your first memories?
Well, I was pretty lucky. I grew up in Sydney, but spent a lot of time in country New South Wales, and I was thrown on the back of the horse, from age about 3. We don't really ride, do we? We sit on them then. But when I was older, so when I was 10, I went off to boarding school in Armidale and took my horse with me. So one of the very few schools in the country where you can take your horse. So I attended there. Those are my earliest memories, yeah.
Now, going off to boarding school, taking your horse, being thrown on a horse is still a long way from having a career. Did you always know that you were going to work with horses, or was there a particular time when you said, I'm going to work with horses?
Look, Glenys, I probably always wanted to, but probably never thought I'd be good enough. I think that's something we all suffer from. The time when I actually made the decision, I didn't actually make the decision to work with horses. I made the decision to improve what I was doing with horses. And that was during a Rolex competition in Singapore, a dressage competition. And I just felt that I was holding this horse together, completely holding it together. And it was a musical, a freestyle. And we won the competition, and I came out thinking, oh, my God, this is not right. There has to be a better way than this. My horse was so tense. I thought, I have to find a way that I can work with the horse. And it was then we moved from Singapore to America, and I found John Lyons.
Okay.
And I fell into it, really.
So if someone's going to work with horses and have a career with horses, what do you think are the core skills or character traits they need to commence in the horse industry?
A sense of humour, patience, just patience and empathy, to be able to see things from the horse's point of view. Depending on what you are. I'm a trainer and basically a foundation trainer. I work on all those foundation things. So I work with a lot of young horses and a lot of horses that have had really bad histories. So there's a lot of untraining and retraining to do. So that's where the patience comes in, and just the time to be able to really understand things from the horse's point of view.
That empathy is important, isn't it?
Yeah.
So working with horses, what do you think the best thing about working with horses?
Oh, the best thing. If you asked me this 6 months ago, I'd have said just the horses, all the different horses and how wonderful it is. But, now I've got to say the people, because I've just found, and isn't it interesting, because I was always a bit scared of social media and because people are so critical on social media. But I've put up quite a lot of stuff lately, and I've had just the best responses, and it's made me so aware of how caring people are about their animals and how they want to do so much better and how open they are to new ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been really surprised, and I'd have to say that, and all the wonderful people I've met and, intern their horses. But, yeah, that's a change for me.
Yeah, I think with horses, people are genuinely trying to do the best thing for their horses.
Mm. Mm.
Sometimes they may need education, but they're genuinely trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about people who've influenced you and helped you in your career? Do you want to mention someone here or anyone?
Yeah, I think, probably John Lyons, really. I mean, when I first went to Colorado, I'd sort of moved to the States saying, yes, I'll move to America if we have to, but I'm going to do a horse training course. So then I set about looking at all the different people, and America is full of trainers. So it was a huge variety of people to choose from. John appealed to me because he called his method conditioned response training, which is not very sexy, but it made sense to me. I could understand that. So it was the science in that I really liked.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a huge influence on me. And more recently, of course, my PhD supervisor, Paul McGreevy, and I started reading things that he had written about 10 years ago. And I had to steal my daughter's library access because it's very hard to get access to these journal articles and things. And I was amazed when I started reading that all those years ago. And I said, Ben, I want to do a PhD with this bloke. Don't know who he is, but I want to do a PhD with this bloke. So, yeah, big influence.
Good, good. What about horses? Tell us about horses or a horse that's influenced you and, just helped you with your career.
Yeah, probably the biggest one would be a little Argentinian polo pony that I used to play polo on in Singapore. And she was terribly, terribly nervous. And when I left Singapore, I made her a promise that I'd get her out if I ever could, because they don't have a great life there. And then I went to John Lyons, so I thought, oh, well, there we go. I'll get her. I'll ship her from Singapore to the States, which I did.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just astonishing. I mean, she was 12, I think, at the time. I then brought her back to Australia. My son learned to ride on her, and she was a wonderful, wonderful horse, but had the most awful history. She'd been through, being broken in Argentina, which isn't pretty, was, still terribly nervous with new people right up until, the last years of her life.
Mm-hmm.
But amazing the way a horse like that, they really make great horses once somebody takes the time to do it, explain things to them.
Gee, she's certainly a well-travelled pony, isn't she? She's gone from the Argentine.
She was very well.
Wow.
I skipped the country in there. She also lived in the UK for 3 years.
Wow, she's, certainly well-travelled. Yeah.
Yeah, very well-travelled. Yeah.
What do you think your proudest moment's been?
Oh, probably enrolling in the PhD. Actually setting out, it took me 6 years, but actually, getting that notification back to say that I'm in was probably it, yeah.
I thought you were going to say, well, when I get my PhD, that'll be the proudest. But, you're sort of on the way. So,
oh, yeah, don't count your chickens.
Maybe we should do this interview again in a couple of yees when you've got your PhD and you can change that.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, okay.
All right. Now, what's been the biggest challenge? Because you said it's taken you 6 years, but even go back further, just, to get where you are now, or even tell us about the last 6 years. What's been your biggest challenge?
Yeah, for me, it's getting the message out. So I started by taking horses in the UK, take horses into training, and then I'd travel around the country and teach clinics and things like that. And when I moved back to Australia, I thought, this is great, but it's not, taking horses into training isn't really, in the end, helping the horse. It's a very temporary thing. So what I need to be teaching the owners to train their horses. So I decided that what I really wanted to do was do something online so people could come along, watch it, and then go and do it on their horse. Australia's enormous, never mind the rest of the world. I can't get around everywhere. So I rang up my internet service provider and said, well, what about this? What can you do for me? And basically I wanted some live streaming. And this was 8 years ago, and he laughed at me. He said, well, that's ridiculous. You'll never be able to do that. So here we are, and I can laugh at him now. So, yes, at the time I made some DVDs because that was all I could do. And then, the last 6 I've been building up this online business, and I do everything online now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so I want to talk to you about your research, your PhD research. Now, the relationship, because you're saying, just there's a lot of folklore and a lot of old wives' tales about horses, training, why they do things. And I know that we tend to treat horses like people, and we categorise them. We've got chestnut mares. You wouldn't buy a chestnut mare because they're always hot and they're always bitchy and they're always, something. But we've got a lovely, lovely chestnut mare that is just lovely. She was born on Fraser Island. She was, Brumby. She's been teaching people to ride for a number of years and, doing this a few times a week. So it's not just a one-off, and just the loveliest horse. But she's called Sweetie. She's a chestnut mare. Mm-hmm. So what can you say? Why have chestnut mares got such a bad rap? Why do we categorise horses?
It's terrible, isn't it? It's terrible. Yeah. Well, I think that's basically what my PhD project is all about, is getting rid of these myths. Because what happens is people get a chestnut mare and they make all these assumptions about it, and the mare suffers as a result. We come back to my quote, this is the last horse in the world. If we're stuck with the chestnut mare as the last horse in the world and we hate chestnut mares, we can't do it, can we? It's not going to work. So the project is designed to get rid of those myths. Now, it's a longitudinal study. So what we're going to do is give people the opportunity to come back in 6 months' time and take it again and see what changes have occurred. So they could go and they could put a new training regime in place, or they could house their horse differently or feed their horse differently, come back in 6 months' time and say, oh, okay, well, that has helped, because we're going to check off a number of different behavioural measurements, and they'll be able to compare those over time. So things like the chestnut mare things, hopefully we will be able to debunk some of those old myths that aren't doing the horse industry or the horses any good at all.
That's good. Now, some of the questions, can you just let us in? Because you've already got a pilot out now with that survey, is that right?
We do. It's quite exciting, actually. We've got a pilot out now. Now, what we want is to get about 1,000 or 1,500 people to go through this pilot for us. It's currently about 230 questions, which is quite a lot. So it'll take 20 or 30 minutes to do it. But what it's going to enable us to do is to look at all those questions that have similar answers so that we can cut the question numbers down a lot. Mm-hmm. It's available right now, so people can go and do it. And they'll be asked demographic questions about their horse and themselves. So just sort of all about their horse, the breed, the size, the colour, all of those things. We'll find all those chestnut mares in there. And then we're going to ask lots of questions about their daily sort of training habits and routines and how the horse is housed and those sorts of things. So we're just looking at the last 6 months. So if somebody has a horse that they've had for the last 6 months and they're familiar with that horse, it'd be a really good opportunity to go and take a look at this instrument and have a go. And it would be very useful for us as well in helping to formulate the final version, which I hope will be out around the middle of the year.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, if people do use the pilot and answer 250 questions, I think you said, can they also use that same data and then come back in 6 months' time to the final version and carry on? Or will they have to start again in the final version? Is it like two separate versions?
No. The very kind people that are doing our pilot version will have to redo the final version because it will be different.
Okay.
Because it'll be hopefully 150 questions, so it would be nice. So it'll be much quicker. This one is for those keen people that would like to help us and give us their feedback. There's also a box for feedback. So we've had some really, really interesting feedback, and I think what's been the overwhelming thing about the feedback has been how much people love their horses. They've just answered 250 questions. Most of the feedback things tell me a little story about their horse. It's just beautiful. It's amazing. Really nice.
Yeah, and then will they get a summary of the data when you're finished? Will they? Because they'd be interested then to see how they compare to, to everyone else that does the survey.
Yeah, absolutely. At this stage, because we're still in the pilot, that's not a feature that we're able to do. That will be a feature of the final EBARC survey. Mm-hmm. So in the middle of the year, when the final one comes out, what you'll be able to do immediately after you've filled it out is compare your ARID to other ARIDs. So there'll be a free comparison, and you can see where your horse sits in comparison to other horses of that breed, which is the same as what CBARC does, which is the canine version of this instrument.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody, but if people have a dog, you can also get to CBARC from my website. So it's a really interesting survey as well. And they've had 80,000 dogs go through that survey.
Wow.
It's huge. Yeah. Huge.
So this pilot, will it be like ongoing, not the pilot, the actual proper one? It'll be ongoing, that they'll be able to say, do it in 6 months' time and then do it again every 6 months, and they'll keep getting feedback on just how things, because it's ongoing, but is going to help people improve, help people realise that certain things they might be doing might be changing the horse's behaviour, and they can just change their behaviour a bit and see how things go. Yeah. Yep. Yeah,
so it's great from the horse owner's point of view or rider's point of view for that sort of thing. I mean, checking in every 6 months to see how you're going, that's fantastic. And also from the scientist's point of view, we're collecting all this data, which would be so useful, so we can start dispelling some of those myths, like the chestnut mare. And we can start saying, really, is it really a good idea, for example, to lunge your horse for 30 minutes before you ride? Does that improve your horse's behaviour in the future? We can, really start looking at these things, which they haven't been looked at. There's really no hard data on things like that.
Yep. All right. Now, can you give us an example of some of the questions, some of the types of questions that would be in the survey?
Oh, okay. There's quite a few big sort of matrix questions. So you'll be asked, you can answer either it never happens, it rarely happens, sometimes, always, usually. I think the answers go something like that. There's choice of 5. And we do different things. So we might ask about how anxious the horse is. So there'll be questions around anxiety. So does the horse paw when it's tied up, or does the horse call out when it's alone? Then we've got questions about the horse's responsiveness to cues. So to find out how much rein pressure, for example, you might need to stop the horse or turn the horse. Or we've got questions about how responsive the horse is to leg aids or artificial aids as well. There's not a lot on specific feeding because it's not a veterinary thing, it's a behaviour thing. So we broad questions about feeding and housing, and then all sorts of questions about how often the horses work and those sorts of things. So we can get an idea of how much people interact with the horse and at what sort of training level the horse is at currently.
Oh, hang on a sec. Let me interrupt to let people know about the horse industry qualifications at onlinehorsecollege.com. If you have a look at the flexible options, there's online theory, and the practical components can be completed by video or with a qualified expert in your area. That website again is onlinehorsecollege.com. Okay, thanks. Yep. So even if they don't work their horse every day and they think, I won't do it, just to know that if they ride their horse once a month, that's still going to give you an overview, isn't it? Yeah.
Even if they'd never ride their horse. So the survey's actually branched into, so we get the demographic, we have the demographics for each, we get the age, the breed, the sex, all of that sort of thing. And then it divides into ridden horses and non-ridden horses.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So if the horse hasn't been ridden in the last 6 months for any reason, maybe it's a miniature, I don't know. If it has been ridden the last 6 months, you take the non-ridden. If it has, even only once, you take the ridden. And that way, you might be doing a slightly different survey in 6 months' time, but you'll get all that feedback back again. Yeah.
Good. All right, Kate, have you got a book that you'd like to recommend to our listeners just to help them with their education and training, what they're doing?
Sure. I'm going to, of course, recommend Equitation Science by Paul McGreevy and Andrew McLean as my number one. And I've got 2 because I'm just like that. Philip Carl's The Twisted Truths of Modern Dressage is another excellent book.
Yep. Both those have been previous recommendations. They're both popular. Yep.
Good. Yeah.
All right. Now, what are you looking forward to at the moment? You know, is it all focused on finishing your PhD, or is there anything else that's sort of the main thing that you're doing?
That's keeping me pretty busy, but I'm really looking forward to doing some travel. I have a grand plan to get myself a gooseneck and travel around Australia and bring these methods to some of the more remote areas of Australia. And that's my plan really for sort of next year and the following year.
So if people are interested in contacting you there, we'll have your details soon, Kate, on horsechats.com/Kate Fenner. But meanwhile, are you able to sum up just in a few sentences your philosophy with horses, just for a message to go out to our listeners?
I think I'd just like to say that, you as an owner know your horse better than anyone, and that every interaction you have with your horse, you're training your horse. And really, it's your obligation then to take responsibility for your horse's training and go about it in a really proactive way.
I think that's good. Good. All right, Kate, and how can people contact you?
Oh, I'm on candooequine.com.
Okay.
They can
all right.
email me there. And the e-bark is there as well.
Brilliant. Yes. I'm going to say that the link and everything will be on our website as well, and it'll be horsechats.com/Kate Fenner, or just go to horsechats.com and search for Kate. All right. So thanks very much for talking to us today. Thanks for talking to us about the e-bark survey. Hopefully you'll get lots of people coming, and the listeners, and you'll get lots of feedback, which, in turn will improve the lives of horses anyway. So thank you very much for that, and good luck with your PhD.
Thank you. Thank you, Glenys.
Okay, bye.
Oh, wait, before you go, if you're an equestrian coach or a horse riding instructor, or even if you aspire to be one, have a look at the free video series for horse riding instructors on the Horse Chats website. Go there now, have a look, horsechats.com.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.